Welcome to Herself, a space for women to have deep conversations about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential, so you can become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. After being in business for over 2 decades, I've learned, as you likely have too, that as you grow your business grows you in unexpected, often challenging, yet miraculous ways. Here, we'll talk about how to get out of your own way so you can grow a business that's abundant and sustainable while allowing you to be a force for good in the world. I'll give you simple, actionable strategies as well as wisdom and inspiration to help you root into your wholeness, lead from your values, and work in ways that feel deeply aligned so you can bring your true self into the world through your business and in every area of your life. Today, I want to share something quite personal. It is a story about how sometimes the most unexpected challenges can become our greatest teachers. And, sometimes leadership doesn't look like hitting your next milestone or launching your dream program. Sometimes it looks like, getting a cease and desist letter in your inbox at an 8 a.m. on a Tuesday and realizing that something in your business needs to fundamentally change. Now, this past year has been one of unexpected and deep transformation for both me and my business. And while I've shared pieces of this journey with you on the podcast this year, today I want to pull back the curtain completely on what it really looks like to evolve with your business, the messy, uncomfortable, and ultimately, I'd say really beautiful, really poignant process of staying true to your soul's calling, even when it means letting go of things that you loved and that you thought were working. Now, as you listen today, I have an invitation for you. I want you to feel into how this applies, how everything that I'm sharing to your own life and business, because while the details that I share today might be different from your own reality, I have a feeling that some of these themes will resonate deeply with you wherever you are right now on your own journey of growth, on your own journey of leadership. So let me take you back to early March of this year. And I had just welcomed a new cohort of really wonderful women into my signature program, Sorceress CEO. And on the surface, you could say that things looked really good. We already had a number of women continuing on with us in the program from earlier cohorts because it's a membership model. So there's kind of like a rolling admission. These new women were excited to begin. They were just really great fits for the program. And I was excited to guide them through 12 months of transformation. And if I'm to be completely honest, I was already sensing that something needed to shift. Something below the surface was morphing. And the first quarter of 2024 had been challenging in ways that I hadn't anticipated. And again, these are things that I have shared on the podcast so far this year, but we all know, especially here in the US, I can only speak for that really because this is where I am right now, but the political landscape here has felt heavier than I've ever known it to feel in my life. My fiance, my mom, my dad were all hospitalized within weeks of each other, and that was really stressful and scary. I am navigating perimenopause, and that means that my system is much more sensitive to stress than it has been before. I'm not able to push through or override things in the ways that I have been in the past. It really is requiring a deep impeccability with listening to my body. And I had just finished an intense launch for Sorceress CEO. It was a big launch, and we had a couple of hard tech challenges, including some with Meta, with our Facebook and Instagram ads. And that's never a fun thing to have challenges with because it's quite complex and hard to figure out where the problem is stemming from. And, a lot of money was going into those ads. And even though it all led to these incredible women joining the program, and even though it felt like everything I'd offered in that launch was some of the best stuff that I've ever offered, I felt really, really good about it. I could still feel something in my bones, like that the program was in some way needing to evolve to respond to what is happening in the world around us. And namely, that we're all experiencing more financial uncertainty and various hardships with this new administration here in the US. And unlike the last time that I launched this program, which was in June and July of 2024, there just seemed to be a lot more reluctance to commit to a year-long program. Like that was didn't really seem to be an issue in June and July, and now in January, February it was. So it's just things really shifted a lot in those several months. And so I responded to that shift in the moment, and I offered rather than a 12-month option, I also offered a 6-month option. And while I just kind of decided that in the moment, I knew it wasn't fully fleshed out and maybe some deeper changes needed to happen to the program once I had more space to feel into that. And then the cherry on top came, and that was that cease and desist letter that I mentioned. It landed in my email inbox completely out of the blue. Was not expecting that. And it became the catalyst for really a deeper level of inner listening and soul centered leadership. But before I tell you more about that moment that the cease and desist letter arrived, I wanted to share more background information about how this whole journey began, because I think that maybe understanding the original vision will help you to better see how this process can apply to your own life and work. So, 2 years ago at this time, I was creating what would become my signature program, Sorceress CEO. And some women in my community have been asking me for something like that. They were inspired by what they see me doing and how they see me doing it. And they wanted support that bridged the gap that they feel between their inner spiritual work and the practical business strategy. And I had offered versions of that program before. Like years earlier, I had a mastermind called the She Leadership Circle. That was an offspring of my second book, which was called The Book of She. And it was designed for women business owners who wanted to lead in a more spiritually attuned way. And I loved it. They loved it. But life changes led me to dissolve that and to dissolve my other programs. And then it was 2 years ago that I was really feeling the stronger call to bring something like that back, but really to evolve that and really make that the heart of my business, to make that just the central focus, like the one thing that I really, really pour a lot of focus and energy into. Because here's what I was seeing in the coaching industry. Like there are a lot of business programs for women, but I feel that these are very surface level. They're all tactics, they're all strategies, but they don't have depth. And these are great programs. I've taken many of them and I've learned a lot, and they don't have depth. And I see that there are spiritual and therapeutic programs that are all inner work, but they don't actually help women move the needle in their businesses. And then these spiritually aligned women, usually therapists, healers, yoga teachers, acupuncturists, things like this, they come to me because they have these more therapeutic offerings, but they don't have the business savvy to implement it, or they don't want to do gimmicky kind of salesy tactics to run their businesses. So I was really seeing the need for something that genuinely bridges these two worlds, the inner and the outer. Again, not in a superficial way, but in a way that genuinely helps women to bring their deepest callings into the world in a way that makes you money, that gives you more time freedom, and that's just sustainable, something that you can maintain over time and actually live the kind of life that you want to live. So I sent out a survey to my audience, and a number of women filled that out. Then I had one-on-one calls with those women who filled out the survey, and I just asked them specific questions. I got their feedback. I took time to hear what they really wanted, and I listened to how that lined up with what I was feeling called to offer and where I was seeing a gap in the market. And so then I put together this program that was based on all that, and I launched it almost 2 years ago as a founding member offer. So what that meant was I opened up 15 spaces at half price for a 12-month program. And the full price was going to be $10,000. So half price was $5,000. So that was a good deal for those women who stepped in. And we filled all those spots through applications. And then I had one-on-one calls with each of those women. And the idea was, and kind of the premise of a founding member launch is that I hadn't created the program yet, but we create it together. And this is something that I always recommend to my clients to do a sort of founding member launch or a beta launch to first validate your idea to see if there are at least 10 people who want to do this with you, to even see if it's a good idea, if it's a good, market fit, and then do all that before you go through the effort of actually creating this program. So at that time, 2 years ago, when I did the founding member launch, this program was called She Serves. She Serves. And that was the name that had originally come to me. I kind of get these program names, these book names as downloads. Like the naming of things feels really important to me. So we spent the first 6 months together, and there were things that worked, there were things that didn't work. I gathered feedback. And then at the start of, what was that, January 2024, I made some significant shifts based on what I had learned. But at that time, I discovered that the name She Serves was under a trademark application. It hadn't gotten the trademark status yet, but it had been filed. And so I knew that I needed to change it before I released the program publicly to the world. And I was crushed because that name just felt so right for the program. That had never happened to me before. I've named so many things over my over 2-decade career. And like I said, these names are like, they're like little divine beings to me. So we were about to relaunch this program to the public. I was significantly leveling it, improving it. We were going to launch it at its full price point of $10,000. And I was just really praying, really listening, like, what is the name? And the name the only name that was coming at that time was Create Your Dream Business. Create Your Dream Business. And I was working with a messaging rather consultant at the time. And when I just said, like, what do you think of this? She loved it. She absolutely loved it. So I was like, okay, if she likes it, this name is coming to me. We need to have a name in order to launch this. I was like, okay, this is good enough. It didn't feel totally right. It didn't fully reflect the original vision of kind of merging inner and outer, feminine spirituality and business. But I mean, the thing is that in business, we need to adapt. We need to be fast on our feet. We need to make big decisions in the moment and not let indecision stall us out. It's not about perfection. It's about doing the best you can with what you have in real time. So we went forward with that name. And then in June of that year, June of 2024, I was preparing for another big launch of that program. And I got a download about what the program was supposed to be called now. And that included the word sorceress. I got sorceress CEO. And sorceress is an archetype that I had been connected with since I was a little girl. There was one particular paper mache mask that I made in art class, I think in 6th grade, that just has stayed with me over time. I don't know where that came to me in the 6th grade, but it was really powerful. And so I started to weave that word through my entire business model in June of 2024. Sorceress CEO. I have a shorter program that's called Sorceress School. That's more of the inner work component. Like it combines women's spiritual leadership and IFS. And then I had the Sorceress Retreat. And then I had my Sorceress sessions for one-on-one mentoring work. So I wove it through everything, and everything was going well until this past January when the world really shifted. So by the beginning of this year of 2025, I was sitting with some bigger questions about the program, about my business model in general. And I was wondering, should I offer my signature program at a lower price point with a shorter time commitment? I was wondering, should I just have one signature program instead of Sorceress School, which was a 6 to 8 week program, and Sorceress CEO, which was a 12-month program? They were originally separate, but one being inner work, one being outer work. But I wondered if the two of them should go together, because what happens is when someone joins Sorceress CEO, they get access to Sorceress School. But I noticed that those women in Sorceress CEO, most of them were not going through Sorceress School. So they weren't integrating all of that inner work material. And I was questioning whether or not that was really to the benefit of them in the program and getting the best possible results. And I was also questioning whether a membership model where people are starting and ending at different times versus a cohort model where everyone moves together at the same time. I was wondering if the latter would create better results and more of a sense of a community feeling. And, what I can say in, as I look back on all this is that I've been supporting women with various kinds of inner work now, like I said, for decades. And I can honestly say that I've never seen anything more confronting for women than when we really come to face our business and money stuff. It's big. It's ancestral. There's resistance, there's avoidance, there's shame. And a lot of times this can lead to not showing up and doing the work and then feeling shame about that. And it kind of snowballs. And so I was realizing, since this is such deep work, I think we need a stronger container. I think we need more accountability. I think we need more community, everyone moving together at once. And I also know the way that I work with people, the way that I facilitate in groups, the way that I mentor, I need a deep container to do that because I also don't feel satisfied staying at the surface level with people. I like to go to the root of things and to be with women who are willing and wanting and showing up to go to the root of things. Like, this is how I can do my best work, do what my soul came here to do. And this is how I can give women the chance to have the best results in their lives and in their work as well. So I was sitting with all these questions. I was sitting with all this when that cease and desist letter arrived in my email inbox. And, it was from another woman business owner, although she wasn't the one who wrote it. She had her lawyer write it. And, she's this woman business owner, has a completely different kind of business than I do. Nothing is similar about it. However, she has a podcast that has the word sorceress in it. And she had a trademark for that podcast with the word sorceress in it. And she was claiming that because of that, I needed to cease and desist using the word sorceress in all of my materials, in Sorceress CEO, in Sorceress School, in Sorceress Sessions, in Sorceress Retreat, in all of my podcasts, all of my social media content, and that I had 2 weeks to comply. So that letter, needless to say, it sent shockwaves through my nervous system. It's really stressful to get a letter like that. And I want to just add something in here that several months before, I had gotten another cease and desist letter from another woman business owner about something completely different. And these are the only 2 times in my 25-year career that I've ever received these letters. And I also wanted to have a little PSA here that both of these women business owners are leading what could be called soul-led businesses or heart-centered businesses. And while I do believe that there is a time and place to take legal action, I do not believe that these 2 instances warranted legal action. And it's really also just an example of the ways that we as women have internalized the patriarchy. And, these communications from both of these women business owners I experienced it as being unkind. And I think that there's a way that we can practice showing up with boundaries, with clarity, with fierceness when there's a time for that. And I think that it's important to lead with assuming the best, assuming positive intent in the other person, and aiming more towards communication and curiosity first, and having a simple conversation with someone before jumping to bringing lawyers in and threatening legal action. So that's just a side note of just where I stand in being a female business owner, and a call to any of you listening who are also running businesses to question how can you maybe there's ways that you want to lead in a similar way. Just assuming positive intent, being curious, having a conversation, even if it's an uncomfortable conversation, before jumping to these more extreme measures. And again, this is not saying that I would never send a cease and desist. I haven't. There are times when I absolutely could have, but I've chosen not to. And just to start with those conversations with people. So when that cease and desist letter arrived, I immediately consulted with my lawyer, and he agreed that they didn't have grounds to press legal charges, that you can't have ownership, you can't trademark the word sorceress, and saying that I could fight it, but there was really no guarantee of how much time or money it would cost or even if I would win. And then he was also saying, or you could comply and you can let it go. And I neither of those felt good to me. And so I did what I advise all of you to do. And I paused, I prayed, I listened deeply. And at first, I think I was leaning more towards fighting it, even though I really didn't feel like I had it in me to do that. I'm really, really trying to take good care of my stress levels and of my body and to keep things as simple as possible. So I was really wrestling with it. And then at 4 a.m., I think it was like 2 nights later, because I didn't have a lot of time. I needed to reply within a certain period of time, or there was, that threatened legal action. So I was really sitting with, okay, how do I even reply to this? And I think it was a couple nights later at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. is when a lot of great ideas happen. There can actually be really bad ideas at 4 a.m. or there can be really good ideas. So this dropped in, and it just literally, it had that feeling of just dropping into my consciousness. And it was herself CEO, herself CEO. And I already had, what you're listening to now, obviously the Herself podcast. And so I could all of a sudden see things more clearly. I could rename, kind of rebrand everything. I could have the Herself retreat. I could fold Sorcerer's School and Sorcerer's CEO into one program, calling it Herself CEO, bringing the inner and outer work together in a single container so that women can go through that entire curriculum with more community, with more accountability. It would be cohort based. It would be 5 months instead of a year. It would have more accessible pricing and more space for me to do deeper work with women, and kind of more accountability for women to really show up and do the work. And then plus I could have her self mentoring for my one-on-one work. And, the name just felt really right. It felt really aligned, and it just brings together that femininity, the self-leadership of internal family systems, the conscious business practices. And it was kind of that feeling of like a jigsaw puzzle piece clicking into place. So over the past few months, I've been making these shifts across my website, the back end of my programs, phasing out the current Sorceress CEO cohort and program, and preparing to welcome this next cohort of women into Herself CEO in the fall. And here's the thing. Again, Sorcerer CEO, it's been so beautiful. I love, love, love working with the women in that program. And the women who really show up and do the work, they get incredible results. And I I stand by it. I still believe in just the full potency of that experience. And life was asking for a shift, even though I loved something, even though I'd put so much work into it, even though it was working. And so this is the thing, it's life is always shifting and changing. Our clients are always shifting and changing. We're always shifting and changing. And we need to stay listening to that. Really, none of this would have happened if I hadn't taken action. And if I, starting with, sending out that survey 2 years ago and having those one-on-one calls, and then creating the founding members launch, and then getting feedback from founding members, and, constantly iterating, like staying with one thing, sticking with it long enough to really listen to it, to see what it wants to become and how it wants to grow, because action creates clarity. And the divine or God or however you know that force wants us to be fully engaged in life, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow. So this experience taught me some important truths about leadership. First, it's sticking with things through all the ups and downs. And like I said, I teach my clients success comes through many, many iterations, and failure is part of that. Unexpected pivots are part of that. So it's about just sticking with something long enough to help it evolve. And you don't just create one thing, and if it doesn't work, you throw it out. Or you don't keep creating one thing after another, so none of them have a chance to really develop. You stick with something, you go deep with that through the ups and downs. And anyone you see who's been successful in business over a long stretch of time, they have done that or they are doing that. Second, your business is always inviting you to grow. Every challenge, every unexpected turn, every inconvenient pivot, every moment when something doesn't feel quite right, these are all invitations to evolve, to become more of who you're meant to be. And if you're here listening, you know that business is really the most potent path to personal development that there is. And you are here because you know that your path of soul growth involves being a business owner. Third, there's no strategy that works when you're not listening and then taking action on what you hear. You have to stay connected with your ideal clients, with what's happening in the world, with your own inner wisdom. You cannot do business in an echo chamber of one. I'm always telling my clients, talk to your clients, get out there, get out from behind your computer and have those real conversations, because business is a relationship between you and the divine, you and your soul, you and your clients, you and your life, you and our world. You cannot do this in isolation. We have to get into relationship, into communication in all of these ways. And finally, soul power leadership means facing what's uncomfortable and choosing integrity anyway. It would have been easier to keep my program as it was or as it is right now, because we're Sorcerer CEO is still happening right now. Even though I was hearing the call that I needed to change it to keep up with the world, what my clients are needing now, not what was happening 2 years ago. And maybe it would have been easier to fight for that name instead of to make these deeper shifts, because it's been a lot. But soul-powered leadership asks us to choose the path that serves the highest good, even when it's messy, even when it requires us to start over in some ways. So yeah, you can see this process of the past 2 years has not been linear. It has not been smooth. There has been a steep learning curve. I have learned a lot. The women who've shown up and done the work in the program have gotten tremendous value as well. Again, it's not about perfection. As this program has evolved, I have too. It's been this kind of soulmate relationship, right? It's required really deep listening and me being willing to be uncomfortable. But again, this is what real leadership looks like. It's not kind of that glossy version that we see on social media, but it's real, it's raw, it's messy. It's a beautiful process of staying connected with what wants to emerge through us and with us. So before we close for today, I want to offer you some questions to sit with. Again, as at the start of this, I was asking you to listen to this through the lens of how are you going through a similar process in your own world, in your own business? And these are the same kinds of questions that helped me navigate this transition. And I encourage you to pause the episode if you need to, grab a journal, type in some notes if you're on your phone, and then just be present with what comes up. Okay, so first let's start with a simple body check-in. Let's take a deep breath together and ask yourself, where in your business or your life are you trying to make something work that doesn't feel quite aligned anymore? Where in your business or your life are you trying to make something work that doesn't feel quite aligned anymore? And notice what comes up without judgment. So maybe it's a program you're offering. Maybe it's a way that you're marketing, a partnership, or even just a daily routine that used to uplift you, but it just doesn't anymore. Now, here's a deeper question. What would you let go of if you knew something better was waiting for you? What would you let go of if you knew something better was waiting for you? And I want to acknowledge that I know this can bring up fear. Parts of us get attached to what we've built, even when it's not fully serving. But what if that attachment is actually preventing something that's next from emerging? And here's an exercise I want you to try. So imagine you're 5 years out in the future, looking back at this very moment. What advice would your future self give you about the choice you're facing right now? What advice would your future self give you about the choice you're facing right now? Sometimes we have to step outside our current perspective to see clearly what our souls are trying to tell us. And finally, what's one small step you could take this week to move toward greater alignment in your business, even if you're not sure where it's leading? What's one small step you could take this week to move toward greater alignment, inner and outer alignment in your business, even if you're not sure where it's leading? So remember, action creates clarity. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. If these questions stirred something in you, really sit with, what is asking to be shifted? What is asking to be changed as you are evolving, as your clients are evolving, as the world is evolving? Because these are unprecedented times, and they're asking us to pivot in unprecedented ways. And for that, we need to be bold. We need to be deeply tuned in. And if something in you knows that it's time to lead differently, to stop over-efforting, to stop doing it alone, to more deeply align your inner world with your professional path, to shed some things that you feel like you've just outgrown and you're ready to move on to new frontiers, but you're afraid to let go. If any of these things apply to you, and if you're just curious to check out this new version of Herself CEO that I have been cooking up here for the past couple of years, and even longer than that has now evolved more significantly in the past few months. Early registration is opening on July 1st. And again, this is going to be a cohort-based program, 5-month program, combining the inner work and the outer work. Nothing like this exists in the world. I've never seen anything like this. And this is a space where I know that I can offer my soul's most potent gifts to you and to your business and to your beautiful calling that you are bringing into the world or wanting to bring into the world. So if you want to get on the wait list for when those spaces open in early July, you can go to sarahavansdover.com/CEO. That's sarahavansdover.com/CEO. And I will also put the link to that in the show notes. And what I want you to take away from today isn't just this story, but it's the deeper invitation that it represents. Your business, your life, your soul's calling, they're all inviting you to evolve. They're all inviting you to become more of who you are meant to be. And the question is, are you willing to listen? Are you willing to choose alignment over comfort, growth over safety, your soul's truth over what looks good on paper? Because that's where the real magic happens. That's where soul-powered leadership begins. And that's what our world needs more of right now, especially from women. So, my dear, thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for witnessing this journey and for having the courage to walk your own path of soul-powered service. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, change doesn't come from listening alone. I invite you to commit to taking one small or large courageous action after today's conversation. One step you can take, if you haven't already, is to sign up for my Sunday journal. It's a weekly newsletter filled with inspiration and reflections about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential to help you become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. You can subscribe at programs-sarahavansdover.com/journal. And if you found this podcast valuable, please share it with the women in your world. Also, I'd be very grateful if you'd leave a review. It helps others find resources like this, and I'd love to hear what's coming alive for you after listening today. Above all, keep going.
And never forget the unique offerings you and your true self bring to the world. Until next time, I'm sending you my heartfelt support.